my take on race has been different since I was a kid.
What you mean?
I mean, like when I was going to London, you would see American race situations has a lot of Jim Crow, slavery, da 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 da. England racism is totally different. First of all, you black people are the second tier minority. Indian people are first. Indian people are the niggas over there. Black people are second. Indians, Pakistanis, they're the first. They're London's black. Jamaicans, Nigerians, they're all the second tier minority. They're not even the main minority. London had a Indian prime minister already. They've had their Obama, who just got out this past election. Their whole perspective is different. So when I would be in Brixton, you be hanging out with just. I remember I hung out with a kid who was like a rude boy, like a hip hop b boy, a kid who was punk, like a punk rocker kid, and a kid who was a straight skinhead. We all kicked it together.
Greetings and welcome to Auntie Yami channel. In today's video, we are going to look into the difference between racism in the United States and racism versus racism in the United Kingdom. What is it all about? Racism in these countries differs significantly in its historical foundations, overtness, and how it manifests institutionally. While both nations struggle with systematic racism, American racism is often characterized by a history of formal segregation and overt expressions, while British racism is often described as more subtle, covert, and intertwined with class dynamics. Before we continue, let's listen to these videos and hear what others are saying. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share.
I literally just watched this girl's video where she was talking about how racism in the UK is a completely different beast. And like, hey, I'm a history student and I'm studying in the UK right now. And I just had some thoughts. So when I'm talking about racism, I'm largely talking about anti-Black racism, just because that's what I know the most about personally. But if I'm comparing the US versus the UK, I have to think about the original sins of both of them, which is slavery and the slave trade. The craziest thing about the UK is that maybe they didn't invent transatlantic slavery, but they absolutely cornered the market on it and then tried to become the crusaders against it. Decided at some point, actually, this isn't good PR. We should stop doing this and make sure that everybody else stops doing it too. And those people are so backwards and evil for doing slavery. That's crazy. Meanwhile, their cousins and descendants are in the Caribbean doing the most horrific things to Black people on the planet, and they're just like, that doesn't have anything to do with us though. They invented like whole systems of racial identity, like demarcations within whiteness, to separate them from their American relatives. Literally in the 16 and 1700s, you see the increase of this rhetoric that being in tropical warm climates as a person from the United Kingdom will cause your brain to degrade. And so if you've ever read Jane Eyre, there's a character in there who was born and raised in the Caribbean and then moved to the UK after marriage, and she famously loses her mind and is like locked in an attic. And that's all a part of their crazy race science that they invented after deciding that slavery was that. The original sin of the United States is also slavery, right? But since the inception of the country, there's always been a large population of enslaved people in the US to push back against it. Where the UK is founded on an idea of like class and propriety and purity of bloodlines and all of this stuff that is not actually like rooted in any kind of historical fact, but are just like these myths that they tell about themselves. The US is founded on the myth of egalitarianism, meritocracy. Everybody has an equal opportunity so long as they just show up and try. And when you have an entire generation of people writing very high-minded works about this egalitarianism while they actively own human beings, it's kind of hard to ignore the contradiction there. Whereas in the UK, class and like these weird stratifications of like racial or constitutional makeup of human beings have always existed. So there's a way that mentally they can handle the idea of like, well, black people are less human than white people because poor people are less human than rich people. And aristocrats are more human than people who did not just like happen to come from the landed gentry. In the US, our entire ideology is everybody is equal. And then you're doing things constantly that go against that ideology. It's I think there's a way that Americans have never been able to handle that cognitive dissonance. Whereas in the UK, there is not as much cognitive dissonance about that because, like I said, there's always been this idea that by virtue of being born from a family that was old with the right name, with the right land holdings, you were just considered to be more human than other people. And again, going back to the Brontes, doesn't matter whether you have money or not, because like you look at, for example, Wuthering Heights, the people who come out on top in that book are the people who are from the landed gentry, from the aristocracy. They might be poor, they might be trashy, they might be cousin married and inbred and praying from the light of God, the Earnshaws and the Lintons, but they still come out on top. And the man who ends up rich, but also absolutely insane and dead, screaming into the wind in a frozen room, is Heathcliff, the man with no family, the man with no name, the man with no land. And when we talk about internalized racism in both of these places, the UK and the US, I think it takes very different forms because of the ways that racism exists in both of these countries. And so, like, taking it back to the original sins of both of these countries, think about how slavery ended in the US versus in the UK. In the US, we fought a war against cognitive dissonance, against the reality that the founding principles of the country went starkly against one of its most profitable enterprises. And if you say the Civil War wasn't about slavery, I have to assume that you just like being indoctrinated. Whereas in the UK, they ended slavery in a legal manner. There were people who were making a lot of money off of it, off of slavery and the slave trade, who prolonged the end of slavery in the UK. But at a certain point, it just became this standard high society posture to say, we don't like slavery, we think it's bad, we should end it. The character of anti Black racism in both countries follows that kind of trajectory. In the US, they do it even though it's illogical and doesn't make sense. Like the most racist people in the country are the ones who are most obsessed with the founding principles of the country, with the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, all of this stuff. And they think that Black people aren't human. And if you take those texts at face value, those two ideologies cannot coexist. And I think the UK's class structure is responsible for the way that racism seems to just like seamlessly permeate every aspect of society here. People aren't as loud fighting against it because the internal logic of the United Kingdom is if you're poor or your family does not have any land, you don't deserve to be a human being. That kind of extrapolates very easily to if you are of a certain skin tone or from a certain country, you don't deserve to be of a human being because it's just like completely arbitrary. And people are less loud fighting against it, both because like being loud and like making a problem is like a bad look because it makes you seem low class, but also because the way that the people in the country view themselves is so tied up in this class structure and has been for millennia, I think. I think in the US, we have this idea that people in the UK kind of take racism sitting down because it's not taught to us the ways that Black people in the UK have been like rising up and fighting against racism. And also because there's all of these clear and blatant examples of anti-blackness, like people writing into fucking the television board to complain that there are Black people on Love Island, and it's almost like accepted in a way. And I think part of the reason that it's accepted is because it's considered to be low class to make a ruckus. And also because Black people and people of color at large are folded into the lower classes of the class system in the UK by virtue of the fact that they can't be landed gentry or aristocracy because their families aren't from here. That's my rant. I hope it made sense.
I think this is a helpful reminder about race, especially as we're having more conversations around Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. And that's that race in America is a lot more complex and has some nuances that race in the UK does not have. One of the reasons why I think the phrase racialized experience is very helpful to use when we talk about race, is because race is something that is first done to us, and then we have to negotiate our racialized experience after that. Now, what do I mean by that? In America, the categorizations of race started from various points, but one of them for Black people, I am Black. I know when people see me, they're like, is she biracial? No, both of my parents are Black. My father was just very fair-skinned. But categorizations of race for Black people started with chattel slavery. It has been reinforced systemically through various policies, moments in history that have basically said these people are racialized as inferior to white people based on these visual characteristics. I know when conversations about race are had between Black people from America and people in the UK, there's a lot of confusion around why we're still adhering to the one drop rule. I can understand from their point of view why that feels confusing, but for us, the reason why we're still adhering to it is because people still are kept from experiencing certain resources and opportunities based on the way we look. It's not based upon us walking into a room and declaring that we're Black. It's if someone has a certain skin color, a certain nose shape, mouth shape, hair texture, that person is racialized within a certain racial category in America. So it's not as simple as someone just negotiating their way out of being categorized as Black. And I know that that's really difficult for someone who hasn't grown up Black in America to understand, but that is our reality. So when we're having conversations right now around Cynthia Erivo, yes, she has said some problematic and hurtful things about my community. And not only that, but it also may be the case that Cynthia doesn't see herself as a Black woman, a Black American Black woman. That's understandable. And because she presents with the phenotype of Black women, even if she's British, but she presents with the phenotype, the visual characteristics that are associated with Black women, and therefore she is racialized as Black. She is seen as Black. She is storied as Black in America. So I just think that's a helpful reminder for people. I am thankful for the work that I get to do when it comes to racial justice within the Christian space. And so a lot of the language that I have now is because of that work, is because of studying to do that work with Black people, white people, people of various racial categories. But I know that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to learn this. So I just wanted to share it.
You've heard each and everyone explaining about how they feel, and even some they are from US and some they are from UK. Let's break it down as we continue to subscribe, like, comment, and share. United States, racism is intrinsically linked to the legacy of chattel slavery, the Civil War, and the Jim Crow era, which legally enforced a strict black-white racial divide and segregation for decades. The history created a deeply embedded complexion-based racial hierarchy that continues to impact society today, while the UK profited from slavery primarily in its overseas colonies in the Caribbean and Americas. But slavery was not legal in British itself. As a result, the UK did not have a comparable system of formal legal enforced segregation like Jim Crow. The modern black population in the UK largely arrived post-World War II, Commonwealth, creating a different historical narrative and a more diverse range of black identities. United States often experience blunt, overt, including verbal abuse, higher levels of police violence. What about the UK? More common is subtle, passive, aggressive, and covert. Microaggressions, though explicit abuse still occurs. Legal context. Racist sentiments are largely protected under the First Amendment freedom of speech. That's in America. In UK, inciting racial hatred is illegal, leading to different cultural pressures on a public expression of racism. Segregation. What is it all about in US? Higher levels of social and residential segregation. In UK, less social separation. White and non-white people are generally more mixed in social setting and housing. Focus discrimination. What is happening in US? Historically and primarily focused on the black-white dynamic, while in UK discrimination affects a wider range of minority groups, often linked closer to class. Institutional and systemic racism. Both countries exhibit significant systemic and institutional racism. Policing and justice. In both the US and the UK, black people are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system, face higher rates of stop and search procedures and deaths in police custodies. Socio-economic status or outcome. In the UK, people of color are more likely to be overqualified for their jobs but less likely to be promoted. In the US, the legacy of slavery contributes to ongoing economic disadvantage and residential segregation. Apathy versus extremism. Some argue that while the US has more extreme, vocal white supremacist groups, the UK struggles with an apathy that allows systemic issues to persist without open discussions. In essence, while the US experience is marked by a history of formal and violent oppression, the UK experience is often one of subtle exclusion and institutional apathy. Many Black Britons note that while life may be better in some respects than in the US, racism is just an insidious and violent in their own way. So this is some of the points to back up what each and everyone was saying about racism in UK. Let's also listen to a few more videos before we wrap up. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share.
This is where I'm from.
Yeah.
But I think where I guess I feel empathy towards the Black American in that equation is how deep the history is in Black America. Like Black American history in America is it's generations and generations that go to slavery. Like we don't, as Black British, we don't have anything close to that. We start talking about Windrush and then we go into the Caribbean.
No,
60 years.
No, because there's been a disservice of our history.
Yes, but what I'm saying is for them,
It's there.
their history is deep
It's like
there.
in there,
Yeah.
No, but I think there's a thing that's happened here that I went to Liverpool and I went through that slavery museum thing in Liverpool, yeah. The way England talk about, we have Black History Month, which is Black History Day at school, yeah. It's Black History Day, yeah, and you might see something, and what they show you is an American experience.
That's right. Martin Luther King.
They just show you. We don't know about no
Dark as Hell.
Samuel Coleridge. We don't know about
Michael X.
We don't know about this. So all our stories are from there because their thing is erasure in terms of, well, you didn't exist in this thing.
It didn't happen here.
It didn't happen here, and then we stopped it. That's the
right.
storyline.
It didn't happen here,
It
but
didn't
when it
happen
did
here.
end, it's because we said that's
decided
enough.
no. And
So
it's
inaccurate.
so far from the. So then, guess what? The stories and we don't have the. My brother teaches history like across, and especially from Black British history of what was going on early. And the problem is, even these stories are not told.
Race does work very differently in the States, because it is a place where white people from Europe settled and colonized and then lived there, right? And enslaved people built the country, right? So it's a site of genocide. It's a site of enslavement. Now, Britain's also done those things, but it's done it somewhere else. But we can kind of tell ourselves in Britain, we can tell ourselves a story of, well, that's not really part of our history here. It is. It's just that it was easier to hide it. So our racism's more polite, In the United States, it's like much more likely to be rude, and carried out, on an interpersonal level, to be rude and carried out.
Let's also read few comments from people issue about racism in UK versus racism in US. Someone is saying, I remember reading a paper comparing racial discrimination in both countries and a number of other European countries. Once, and the punchline was something like this: America is worse when it comes to discrimination against black people, but the UK tends to be worse when it comes to discrimination against other racial groups. So whilst black people in America are often treated poorly, that is much less true of, say, Asians. But in the UK, there was a higher likelihood and racial discrimination against people of Asian descent. My overthought after reading that paper is, having spent a lot of time in each country, is probably fair comment. What do you think about this comment? Do you agree with what this person is saying? Let's go to another comment. The UK is multicultural. You can walk down the high streets in any reasonable sized town and meet English, Irish, Welsh, Scottish, Polish, Lithuanians, Latvian, Ukrainian, Indian, Pakistan, Nigerian, Puerto Rican, Chinese, Japanese, Thai, Ugandan, Jamaican, Barbadian. The list goes on. All of these people are just going to work, shopping, drinking, coffee, talking. We don't label people as Black British, Indian British, Chinese British. We have Deroy, Sanjay, and Lee. Do you agree with that? Most of us don't even think about a person's race. I agree with that. Person's race or ancestry. We see the person is Suki, a nice person. Is he a good worker? Does he treat other people with respect? In that case, he's okay. Did I just hear Mark swear at the woman? Then I'm not happy with Mark. This is about UK. Do you agree with that? Instead of labeling individuals, we should be getting to know people. There are good and bad people all over the world, whatever their origin or skin color is. Do you agree with that? Drop a comment and let me know if you agree with this comment. Let's see another comment. This person has lived in UK for 23 years and US for 33 years. In my observation there and in other countries, I have lived in Germany too. I intend to find the strongest racism towards those that have been brought into the country as cheap labor at some point in the country's history. So in the USA, it's Africans and Mexicans with some Chinese. In the UK, it's against Indians and Pakistans. More recently, it's been the Eastern Europeans that came in while the UK was in the EU. In Germany, it is the Turkish. The extra problem is that in the USA, being dark-skinned is lumped in with the African people who were brought over as slaves. Which one is worse? Depends totally on your perspective. But in my experience, it tends to be worse with the way the US has treated black people. I don't know of reaching of Pakistanis being common or segregated schools, buses, toilets, etc. I haven't heard the equivalent of Turkish people in Germany being arrested for being black in the wrong neighborhood. I don't have numbers. I have done an in-depth study, so these are subjective views. Do you agree with that comment? Drop a comment and let me know, because this is becoming very interesting. Is racism more rampant in the UK or the US? This is another person. I've been watching the royal wedding coverage. It's been impossible to avoid on British and American channels. There's been one striking difference. The American coverage always mentions that Miss Markle is of mixed race. The British coverage never does. Frankly, we don't care, but the Americans do. Someone said, neither are the most racist nation on earth. Anyone who thinks that has probably never been to another nation. China is extremely racist. Their whole strategy is racial and cultural genocide. Several Middle Eastern nations absolutely hate white people, which, yes, despite rebel beliefs, is racism. Many nations surrounding China hate the Chinese with a burning passion. The Japanese see the Okinawas as inferior. The US and UK are only seen as racist because the media forces the narrative. Also, we have countless races and cultures in one area forced to coexist, unlike all these other places, so that natural conflict is why the two seem more racist. Do you agree with that? Because we can continue reading these comments non-stop. Let me read the last one as you continue to subscribe, like, comment, and share as you watch this video without skipping the ads from the beginning until the end. Racism and intolerance of minorities are, in my mind, two different things. Having said that, I believe that on average, America is more racist and more intolerant of minorities than the UK by a wide margin. In the US, there are more extremely racist people, more who claim not to be racist or anti-minority, but keep passing racist and anti-minority laws. And there are more people who keep electing these politicians. The House of Representatives is just under half full of people who say and do racist things, though claim not to be racist. And even more who are anti-minority or other, whether it's racial or sexual. On the other hand, though I was recently given a subscription to a British newspaper, it was always known as a sensible right of center paper. Reading it regularly after some years of not so close reading British newspapers, I was surprised at how far down the Rooney right things seem to have got. This was the paper I used to regularly read when I lived in the UK. I never thought I'd read about government minister from the Conservative Party put forward a proposed law that every single business must provide specific toilets for males and for females. Conservative in the UK was always about people and business, doing what was best for their lives or business, and the government keeping their damn noses out of it. Besides, good luck traveling on an airplane. So I guess the UK is moving towards the insanity that prevails in the US. Do you believe in that? Do you agree or not? Drop the comment and let me know what you think. Thank you very much for taking your time to watch this video. Thank you very much to all my subscribers, both returning and new subscribers, for your love and support. As someone who is a migrant in UK, I agree with most of these comments, what they say. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Thank you very much for listening, and also thank you very much for subscribing. Make sure you subscribe and you watch this video so that we can continue to bring conversation like this one, which are interesting and educative. So thank you. God bless you abundantly. Have you ever faced racism? Let me know. Drop a comment. Thank you. God bless you abundantly. Ciao, ciao. Bye. Mwah.
I know. You are living with my love. Yeah. On Yummy TV, the best show ever. We expose and we tell as it is. No fear, no bias whatsoever. Just the way it is done. Subscribe, like, and make sure you follow. Hey, me follow back. I know. You are living with my love. Yeah. On Yummy TV, the best show ever. We expose and we tell as it is. No fear, no bias whatsoever. Just the way it is done. Subscribe, like, and make sure you follow. Hey, me follow back. I know. You are living with my love. Yeah. On Yummy TV, the best show ever. We expose and we tell as it is. No fear, no bias whatsoever. Just the way it is done. Subscribe, like, and make sure you follow. Hey, me follow back. I know. You are living with my love. Yeah. On Yummy TV, the best show ever. We expose and we tell as it is. No fear, no bias.